In today's video, we're going to build this removable cedar ice chest. You can take this cooler out as many times as you want. You know, I show you in the video. It's a snug fit. It's got a self-centering system in it, in the bottom of it, where it drops right in place every time. Presto. I hope you join me in this video. So let's get to it. To make the legs, I ripped 2 pickets down, 2 7/8 of an inch wide and 2 1/4 inch wide. See how this works? Picked up this easing plane. I had never used one before. It's a quick grab tool for chamfering these 90-degree corners down. I really like this tool. You'll see I use it all through this video. Today we're going to be building without woodworking plans. You have to really think outside the box. You have to work through all the problems, and in this case, engineer solutions. I'm making 2 of these frames. One's going to be the bottom support, and the other one's going to be the top of the chest. The inside dimension of these frames is 15 7/8 by 28 inches. I took the measurements off of the cooler for this ice chest build. When you're building something, your foundation is where it all starts, and you're going to be building everything off of these frames. So take the time that you need to make sure that it's square and that they're identically sized. I wanted to put in a beefier bottom for the ice chest, and so here I am laying out what is essentially a floor joist system, but just on a much smaller scale. We're not doing any rocket science here. We're not subjecting this to any engineering standards. I just decided to use pickets as spacers. I put 5 of these in, and I just run them out to the end. The 2 on each end are a little close to the edges because that's kind of right where the end of the cooler is. I brad nailed and glued a cleat that you can see there. I missed it on the camera. This low-angle Jorgensen block plane I just recently picked up from Lowe's. I'm a Lowe's partner, and there will be links in the description. And if you should happen to purchase anything, I will receive a small commission. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, on Lowe's, you can place your orders online, have them shipped to your home, or they'll have them ready for you to pick up, and they'll send you a notification when they're ready. With this type cooler, when I flipped it upside down, obviously you don't have that lip on the other side, so I'm shimming it. Here I've mocked up my corners. These sidewall pieces need to be 17.5 inches long. And I'm getting the spacing for right here for the trim. This is 13 inches long, so if you end up buying this exact same cooler, you'll be able to use the dimensions that I'm going to provide. Checked it with the level, checked it with the square. Test fit, looked good. Now let's take it apart and put Humpty Dumpty back together again. The ends are going to perfectly accommodate 3 full picket widths. I got a couple of 1.25" fillers that are going to be hidden up underneath the legs and which are going to help solidify the corners. I marked the center point of the picket and I marked the center point of that long base. And I'm just going to line the two of those up, centering it in the middle, and then work my way to each of the corners. By the time this project was done, I ended up using a full bottle, not the jug, but the smaller bottle of glue. So 2 of the small bottles cost a little bit more than the big jug. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, that is a spacer that I needed to put in there to offset the lip that was the previous hinge on the cooler. Here I needed to unwhopper jaw this thing, so I'm clamping down the base, and then I just need to pull that one side down just a tiny fraction to get this thing all squared and leveled back up before I lock it down with this set of legs on this side. Applying some light clamping pressure. You can't see it here, but I definitely checked to make sure everything was square and plumb when I was putting these clamps in place. Here I'm measuring out to cut these side insert trim pieces. Don't nail into knots. I'm chamfering the corners over with this easing plane here. This is a quick grab handy tool, I gotta tell you, I love it. More glue. I'm just lining up to make sure that I have a continuous line from the bottom all as it wraps around. Using a hammer and punch to sink some brad nails that didn't sink all the way in. If you angle your gun, sometimes you'll keep from popping back through if your brads are just a little longer than you would like. This lid is rotational molded and it's very thin, and I just used this coping saw to cut it off after easily popping it out. I'm building this as I go. I've never built one of these before, and I forgot to allow for the thickness of this. I had this turned upside down, and I should have placed a set of shims on the bottom, this thickness, but oh well. Now I'm just going to have to put more wood and bring the bottom up. You can see these clamps right here. I placed it in place, but I'm just going to assemble it right on this thing. And so I put it to where I wanted it. I'm going to clamp the back, and then I'm going to put one pin in this corner, one pin in this corner, and then I will drop this into place, and then you swing each side in and you can tighten up your joints. Subscribe, get notified, share, like. So I figured out the system to where it automatically will center this cooler each time you lift it in and lift it out, so the lid secures properly when you open and close the lid. Pay close attention to this because I had to engineer this little system. I'm going to explain it to you. These are basically all 30-degree cuts and bevels. And I'm going to take these out. I cut a 30-degree off of this end on my table saw, and it creates a cone shape that will center the cooler, and then you mount the lid. I'm going to have to space across the back with some type of a backer to help support this in the middle, and that's going to serve a dual purpose because I'll make it big enough to be structural, and then on the outside I'm going to put the bracket attachments on into that backer that supports this. One of the reasons why I'm putting this spacer on the back side of the angled piece is because I wanted to make sure you had plenty of clearance for your knuckles and your fingers to get down in there and pull this cooler out without, scratching yourself or getting splinters. That edge that I'm gluing is ripped at 30 degrees also. I'm going to switch to the longer brads and put a few in that run into those cross members right here, or mini joists, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just shooting these in at the correct location to stop that sloped piece on the side exactly where I want the cooler to drop in to position itself in the center. I hope that makes sense. Well, damn, I forgot to press record. I doubled up 2 sheets of fence pickets, and I added this to the bottom. I had forgot to allocate for that top. And those angles center the bottom of this cooler. Check this out. If you try to drop this cooler in on the side, watch over there. It rocks, but it didn't shift. It's perfectly centered. So you can take this cooler in and out as many times as you like and not have to worry about the lid not lining up. Hey, if you've made it this far, please go ahead and hit the like button because it really does help. I framed this right up against that lid, as you can see. Just tossing in some spacers here to help kind of keep it uniform the way I want it. I had to go back and use this block plane here to, kind of flatten out these boards. They were pretty cut. You got to expect that when you're dealing with picket fence. Something like 180 grit here. I got that between 3 and 4. What I'm doing here is I'm using a little cove bit to make room for the barrel on these hinges. I pulled in 7¼ inches from the edge of the face frame on the base unit and kind of went from there. I ran into a knot, so I routed out a little larger area than I would have wanted to. I'm just going to use this as the stop for my router. Okay, I mounted these hinges. Ideally, in the future, I would get a smaller set of hinges, one that didn't have such a big barrel here. I caught a knot over here, so this corner here kind of looks like crap. I pre-drilled and then just screwed these in on the back side first, pulling the barrel up against the groove that I routed out. I'm gonna mount this bottle opener here. These legs are 2 7/8 wide, so 1 7/16 is the center point. Preferably longer screws, maybe. This is what came with it. This is my handhold. I use that easing plane and put a chamfer on here, and then I just ran a file across here to radius off the corner. Now we drill. I'm going to use some blue tape here to show where I'm going to drill. I want to put 1 screw here, 1 here, and 1 here, and I'll do the same on the other side. I have a fairly long drill bit to keep my drill chuck from marring up the edges of the thing, even though it's really going to get covered. So I'm just basically giving myself a mark. I'm going to put a mark on there. So when I drill, I'm just going to drill like that. All right, so I drilled 2 holes. And I got this shim on here as a spacer to allow for the screw head. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now I don't want to screw in the screws until I secure the boards in the top. I'm going to adhere these with a little bit of JB Weld for plastics. These are coated deck screws, and you don't want to overdo it on these. If you're not comfortable with your drill, you can always set the torque so low. I want just enough pressure to let the epoxy set up. Well, I don't have a countersink with a long enough bit to reach, so I'm just going with the Big Boss. Couldn't find a long enough extension, so I'm not going to bore you, but I'm going to screw all these in by hand. Okay, we're all screwed in on the sides, and there's the first opening. The dimensions that I gave you at the beginning of the video for the top and bottom frames were 3/16 of an inch larger than what this one actually is, to give a little bit more space than this has. There's the holes for the screw heads. Presto, they're gone. Rub joint. Rub, rub, rub. Put some weights on there and just barely snug those up just to keep them from moving around. That was quite a bit of glue I put in there. Now I'm going to go and reinforce this with some 1 1/4 inch coated deck screws. Pre-drill and countersink. Well, I hope you enjoyed this build. I'm going to go ahead and put some screws in it and call this finished.